You think you're a rational, modern human in full control of your actions. But what if that's a lie? What if a significant chunk of your daily decisions, your deepest fears, and even your weirdest habits are actually being dictated by a prehistoric version of you ever jump at a tiny shadow, convinced something's there? Crave sugar like it's the last food on earth, or feel deeply annoyed when a stranger stands just a little too close? Don't worry, you're not strange. You're simply running a Stone Age operating system on a 21st century supercomputer. Your inner caveman is still trying to survive, protecting you from dangers that no longer exist, and pushing you towards rewards that now do more harm than good. These aren't flaws, they're echoes of an evolutionary past. Get ready to uncover the 10 bizarre, totally illogical instincts from your inner caveman that are secretly running your modern life. Let's start with why your brain still sees monsters in the dark. You're home alone, the lights are off, and a faint creak echoes from the hallway. Your heart jumps. Was that just the house settling, or something else? Your eyes strain, trying to decipher the shadows, and suddenly, that pile of clothes on the chair morphs into a crouching figure. A tree branch scraping against the window outside sounds suspiciously like scratching. It's a primal fear, one we often dismiss as childish, yet it grips us even as adults in our supposedly safe, modern homes. But this isn't just your imagination playing tricks, it's your inner caveman, hard at work. For our ancestors, the dark was a genuine threat. Predators roamed, rival tribes lurked, and danger was often unseen until it was too late. Their survival depended on an incredibly sensitive early warning system, one that prioritized detection over accuracy. It was better to mistakenly see a threat where none existed, a false positive, than to miss a real threat, a false negative. This ancient, life-saving mechanism is still deeply ingrained in your brain. Here's the shocking scientific truth: when your surroundings plunge into near-complete darkness, your visual cortex, the part of your brain responsible for processing sight, doesn't just shut down. Research, like that conducted at institutions such as the Max Planck Institute for Brain Research, indicates that it can actually become hyperactive, sometimes showing up to 20 times more activity than when it has clear visual input. Think about that in the absence of real light. Your brain goes into overdrive, desperately trying to construct an image, to find something, anything, in the void. It's like your brain's internal projector is churning out images, piecing together fragments of memory, expectation, and fear to fill in the blanks. Those shadows, those indistinct shapes, become raw material for your brain to interpret, often in the most alarming way possible. Your caveman brain is literally painting monsters in your head, using the darkness as its canvas. It's not seeing, it's creating. The absurdity is profound. You're lying in your comfortable, locked apartment, protected by modern security, yet an instinct honed over millions of years against saber-toothed tigers and rival hunter-gatherers is making you scan the room for an assailant who simply isn't there. This isn't a flaw in your personal wiring, it's a feature of a deeply outdated operating system, a biological legacy that continues to interpret the ordinary creaks and shadows of your safe 21st century bedroom as a primal threat. That's just the first peek into the bizarre ways your ancient instincts are still shaping your modern reality. Invisible fears have a logical explanation, but what about that relentless, almost compulsive urge for something sweet, the one that kicks in after a long day, or when you're feeling down, driving you straight to the cookie jar or the nearest vending machine? This isn't just about satisfying a sweet tooth, it's another primal whisper, amplified and distorted by the modern world. For our hunter-gatherer ancestors, sugar was a lifeline. Found rarely in ripe fruits or honey, it signaled a dense, quickly available source of energy, crucial for survival, for escaping predators, or for enduring long periods of scarcity. Our brains evolved to crave these precious calories, rewarding us with a surge of pleasure, dopamine to be precise, whenever we found them. It was a brilliant, life-sustaining mechanism: seek sugar, get energy, feel good. But here's where your ancient operating system gets spectacularly hacked. Be fast forward to the 21st century, and sugar isn't a rare treat, it's ubiquitous, cheap, and engineered into nearly everything we consume. Modern food scientists aren't just creating tasty treats, they are, in essence, reverse engineering our survival instincts. They understand precisely how our brains respond to sugar, fat, and salt, and they've perfected the art of creating foods that hit what's known as the bliss point. That precise combination designed to bypass our natural satiety signals and make us want more, and more, and more. These aren't accidental formulas. Extensive research, backed by neuroscientific understanding, goes into optimizing these products to trigger the same powerful dopamine pathways in your brain that were once reserved for genuine survival rewards. The result, a perfectly legal, highly effective system designed to turn you into a loyal, often unconscious, consumer. Your inner caveman, hardwired to seek energy from scarce resources, is now being endlessly bombarded by an overwhelming abundance. It simply can't distinguish between a wild berry found after a long hunt and a highly processed snack bar. It just knows sugar equals survival, consume. This ancient programming means you're often not truly choosing that extra serving. You're responding to a deeply ingrained biological imperative that has been expertly manipulated. It transforms you from a conscious eater into a reactive hostage of products designed to perpetuate your craving. The feeling of crashing after a sugar high, the irritable hunger pangs, the overwhelming desire for just one more bite. These are the echoes of a system in overdrive, a primal alert that now sounds for trivial, readily available processed goods. What was once a life-saving quest for sustenance has become a relentless, often detrimental, cycle of seeking and consuming, all because your brain's ancient desire for energy has been spectacularly and profitably exploited. Invisible fears have a logical explanation, but what about that relentless, almost compulsive urge for something sweet, the one that kicks in after a long day, or when you're feeling down, driving you straight to the cookie jar or the nearest vending machine? This isn't just about satisfying a sweet tooth, it's another primal whisper, amplified and distorted by the modern world. From a simple sugar craving, we now turn to personal boundaries. It might sound unrelated, but both, in essence, stem from the same place, the instinct for survival. You know that subtle, almost visceral discomfort you feel when someone stands a little too close, lingering just inside what feels like your personal bubble. That instinct to instinctively step back, to create distance, isn't merely a quirk of etiquette, it's a direct echo of your ancient past. A territorial alarm bell ringing in the 21st century. For our ancestors, personal space was a matter of survival. An intruder in your immediate vicinity could be a rival, a predator, or a competitor for scarce resources. Having a defined, often invisible, boundary around oneself was a crucial mechanism for safety, for ensuring one's resources remained untouched, and for signaling to others where your territory began. Your brain evolved to instantly register such proximity as a potential threat, triggering a subtle, automatic defense mechanism. Yet, this deeply ingrained human need for personal space isn't as universal as you might assume. Travel to a bustling market in Rio de Janeiro or observe conversations in many Arab cultures, and you might find people standing much closer, often touching or embracing in ways that would make many Westerners instinctively recoil. For them, this proximity isn't an invasion but a sign of warmth, trust, and engagement. Anthropologist Edward T. Hall, who pioneered the study of proxemics, how humans use space, meticulously documented these profound cultural differences. His research illustrated that while the underlying need to manage space is universal, the rules for how that space is defined and defended are incredibly fluid and shaped by environment and culture. This shows that your deeply felt need for a personal bubble is less about a universal human truth and more about a specific cultural expression of a primal, protective instinct. So, when you're squeezed into a packed subway car, shoulder to shoulder with strangers, or forced to stand uncomfortably close in a crowded elevator, your inner caveman doesn't care that you're perfectly safe. It doesn't process the fact that there's no real threat to your physical well-being or your resources. All it registers is a breach of its invisible territory, triggering that familiar, albeit illogical, wave of unease, annoyance, or even mild anxiety. That discomfort you feel when a colleague leans too close over your shoulder at work, or when a stranger brushes past you in a queue, isn't a sign of social awkwardness. It's your ancient brain signaling a potential territorial infringement. a vestigial alarm bell ringing loudly in a world where physical threats are largely replaced by inconvenient proximity. Your territory has shrunk from acres of savanna to a few square feet of personal space, yet your ancient operating system continues to defend it with the same primal vigor. Personal space is a physical boundary, a silent declaration of your territory. But what about informational boundaries? Why are we so drawn to invading the private lives of others? Or perhaps, why do we find ourselves irresistibly pulled into the latest drama, whether it's unfolding in our office, among our friends, or even with complete strangers online? That insatiable urge to know the latest scandal, to dissect a celebrity's downfall, or to passionately engage in an online debate about someone else's choices isn't just a modern vice. It's a profound, ancient instinct masquerading in 21st century attire. In the vast, unpredictable savanna, your ancestral tribe's survival depended not only on physical prowess, but also on social intelligence, understanding who was sleeping with whom, who was gaining influence, who was reliable, and who posed a threat wasn't idle chatter, it was crucial data. This exchange of social information, what we now call gossip or drama, served as a vital form of social grooming. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar's influential social brain hypothesis suggests that as our groups grew larger, we replaced the time-consuming physical grooming seen in primates with the more efficient sharing of information about group members. Talking about others helped reinforce social bonds, establish hierarchies, and keep everyone abreast of the dynamic political landscape of the tribe. Furthermore, sharing secrets or juicy tidbits, especially about potential rivals or threats, could trigger the release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, cementing trust and allegiance among the inner circle. Your brain didn't evolve to care about a Netflix series, it evolved to relentlessly track the unfolding sagas of its own real-life cast of characters. Because knowing the plot twists could mean the difference between thriving and perishing. Fast forward to today, and your ancient operating system, still wired for tribal intrigue, finds itself in a hyper-connected world overflowing with an infinite supply of drama. The consequences are, to put it mildly, counterintuitive and often destructive. This primal hunger for social information, for mapping allegiances and threats, is what makes fake news spread like wildfire. Our brains are hardwired to prioritize dramatic, emotionally charged narratives, especially if they confirm our existing biases, regardless of their factual basis. This ancient mechanism also fuels phenomena like cancel culture, where collective outrage, akin to tribal shunning, can erupt and spread globally within hours, driven by a shared, often superficial, understanding of a perceived transgression. We become obsessively invested in the lives of celebrities, treating their public and private struggles as if they were members of our own immediate tribe, their triumphs and downfalls offering a vicarious thrill and a seemingly safe space to practice our social judgment. That relentless doom scrolling through social media feeds, consuming every conflict, every scandal, every outrage, isn't necessarily a sign of a flawed character. It's your inner caveman trying to make sense of a tribe of billions, frantically searching for connections, understanding power dynamics, and detecting threats in an information overload that it was never designed to process. The insatiable quest for drama is no longer a tool for survival, it's often a source of anxiety, division, and an endless, unproductive distraction. From the endless scroll of social drama, we shift our gaze from the intangible consumption of information to the very tangible accumulation of possessions. We've deciphered the primal urge to know everything about our metaphorical tribe. But what about the relentless urge to own everything? Take a moment and consider your own surroundings. Why is your closet overflowing with clothes you rarely wear? Or your digital hard drive crammed with files you'll likely never open again? This isn't just a byproduct of modern consumerism. It's a profound, deeply ingrained impulse, a whisper from your ancient past that still dictates far too much of your present. Imagine your distant ancestors, living in a world where scarcity was the norm, not the exception. Every berry bush, every hunted animal, every sturdy branch for shelter represented a critical resource. To survive, they couldn't afford to waste. They had to acquire and store to ensure that when the lean times inevitably came, there would be enough. The instinct to hoard was a lifeline, a hardwired survival strategy that meant the difference between life and death for the individual and the entire group. That sense of security, the rush of having more than enough, was incredibly rewarding, stimulating the same ancient reward pathways in the brain, like dopamine, that even today give us a fleeting high when we make a new purchase. Animals, from squirrels burying nuts to beavers building dams, exhibit this same foresight, driven by the primal fear of future deprivation. Our brains learn to associate accumulation with safety, with thriving. Now, fast forward to a world of unprecedented abundance. Supermarkets are always stocked, online stores deliver to your doorstep overnight, and digital storage is practically infinite. Yet, that ancient programming persists, often turning into an irrational drive. We buy clothes not because we need them, but because they're on sale, a perceived bargain that appeals to our primitive desire to accumulate resources efficiently. We cling to old gadgets, worn-out furniture, or countless digital photos and emails, not for any practical purpose, but because a part of our brain screams, "What if I need this later?" This persistent fear of future scarcity, even when surrounded by overflowing closets and gigabytes of data, manifests in a myriad of counterproductive ways. It fuels consumer debt. As we constantly chase the next essential acquisition, it clutters our physical and digital spaces, creating anxiety rather than the promised security. It fosters a pervasive sense of never enough, trapping us in a cycle where true contentment remains just out of reach, ironically driven by an instinct designed for survival. Your inner cave dweller, forever fearing a famine that will never come, compels you to keep collecting, turning you into a reluctant archivist of your own life, often at great personal cost. We accumulate possessions, driven by an ancient fear of scarcity, but there's another, far more insidious kind of hoarding we engage in: the hoarding of familiarity. Why do we cling so desperately to what we know, even when it no longer serves us? Why does the mere thought of stepping outside our so-called comfort zone fill us with such profound dread? For your prehistoric ancestors, anything new was a potential threat. A new berry could be poisonous. A new path could lead to a predator. A new tribe could be hostile. Caution wasn't just a virtue, it was a survival imperative. Your brain developed a powerful defense mechanism known as neophobia, an innate aversion to novelty and change. The amygdala, that ancient alarm bell in your brain, would scream danger at the slightest deviation from the known, prioritizing safety over exploration. Sticking to the familiar, even if it wasn't ideal, dramatically increased the chances of living to see another day. This hardwired preference for the known over the unknown, for the predictable over the uncertain, was the ultimate evolutionary cheat code for survival. But in the 21st century, with saber-toothed tigers replaced by spreadsheets and poisonous berries by processed snacks, this ancient defense mechanism has become less of a safeguard and more of a straitjacket. Your comfort zone, once a vital sanctuary, has often morphed into a self-imposed prison, holding your potential captive. This isn't about laziness, it's about your brain, still operating on ancient software, perceiving any significant change or challenge as a mortal threat. That new job opportunity requiring different skills, that terrifying prospect of moving to a new city, that daunting task of finally breaking free from a toxic relationship or an unhealthy habit. Your inner cave dweller sees not opportunity or growth, but a gaping maw of uncertainty, triggering the same primal fear response as if you were facing a real predator. Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman's work on loss aversion further illuminates this irrational bias. We often feel the pain of losing something twice as intensely as the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. This means the perceived risk of leaving a familiar, albeit suboptimal, situation often outweighs the potential rewards of a new, better one. Your brain, in its ancient wisdom, tells you to hold on to the known, even if the known is holding you back. It's why you might stay in a soul-crushing job you hate, avoid learning new skills that could advance your career, or cling to old, unhealthy routines because, well, they're your routines. The familiar discomfort feels safer than the unknown possibility of success, or even greater discomfort. This profound resistance to change means you continuously bypass opportunities for personal growth, innovation, and genuine happiness. Your evolutionary programming, designed to keep you safe from a harsh, unpredictable world, now actively prevents you from fully exploring the rich, diverse, and relatively safe landscape of modern life. It's a cruel irony the very mechanism that once ensured your ancestors' survival now often condemns you to a life of stagnation, preventing you from evolving beyond the confines of a self-imposed, ancient fear. Your comfort zone isn't a place of growth, it's a cage built by a brain that still expects a famine. If your comfort zone feels like a cage built by a brain still expecting a famine, then prepare for this next one. Your brain has an emergency button, and it's constantly being pressed by things that aren't actually emergencies, while familiarity offers a semblance of safety. What happens when that safety is a phantom, and your brain manufactures danger from the most innocuous modern occurrences, activating a chemical response so fierce you can barely control it? For your ancient ancestors, the fight or flight response was the ultimate survival superpower. A rustle in the bushes, the shadow of a predator, a rival tribe encroaching, these were undeniable, life-threatening dangers. In an instant, your body would surge with adrenaline and cortisol, your heart would pound, muscles would tense, and senses would sharpen. Blood would divert from non-essential functions to your limbs, preparing you to either confront the threat or flee from it at breakneck speed. This rapid, automatic response was the difference between life and death, an exquisitely tuned biological choreography for immediate physical survival. But fast forward to the 21st century, the saber-toothed tigers have been replaced by overflowing inboxes, impending deadlines, rude drivers, or even just an unexpected phone call. Yet, your prehistoric brain, still operating on ancient software, applies the exact same life-saving protocol to these non-physical, symbolic threats. That email from your boss requiring an urgent response, the aggressive horn from the car behind you, a negative comment on social media to your inner cave dweller. These aren't minor annoyances, they're potential dangers demanding an immediate, visceral, fight or flight reaction. This isn't merely feeling stressed, this is your sympathetic nervous system, the body's natural emergency button, being activated repeatedly throughout the day. Your adrenal glands relentlessly pump out cortisol and adrenaline, preparing you for a physical sprint or a brawl that will never come. Your blood pressure rises, digestion slows, and sleep patterns are disrupted. It's an evolutionary mechanism gone rogue, a constant state of heightened alert that keeps your body perpetually primed for a physical battle you will never actually fight. The profound, often debilitating, consequence is a modern epidemic of chronic stress and anxiety. You find yourself experiencing mini panic attacks over trivial matters, reacting with disproportionate anger during road rage, or compulsively doom scrolling, desperately seeking more threats online because your brain is already on high alert and expects them. This constant physiological readiness, this endless series of false alarms leads to burnout, insomnia, digestive issues, and a profound sense of exhaustion, even when you're just trying to relax on your couch. Your internal emergency button, designed for true life or death scenarios, is now being triggered by your phone buzzing, turning everyday modern life into a relentless, exhausting series of biological crises. It's like living with a smoke detector that blares every time you toast bread, leaving you perpetually wired and weary without ever facing a real fire. If your brain is constantly pushing a fake emergency button, creating danger where none exists, imagine what happens when it simply invents reality out of thin air, convincing you of things that are utterly, fantastically untrue. You've probably seen it: a smiling face in your morning toast, a grimacing figure in a cloud, or even the faint outline of a person etched into the grimy surface of Mars. This isn't just your imagination playing tricks, it's a deep-seated evolutionary quirk known as pareidolia, where your brain's pattern recognition goes into overdrive, finding familiar shapes, especially faces, in random or ambiguous stimuli. For our ancient ancestors, this tendency was a critical survival tool. Picture yourself in the savannah, a rustle in the tall grass, a shadow flickering in the periphery, or a peculiar arrangement of stones. Was it a predator, a rival tribe, or just the wind in an environment teeming with genuine threats? Your brain prioritized seeing something, anything, over missing a potential danger. It was far better to mistakenly identify a rock as a lurking beast, a false positive that costs nothing but a brief jolt of fear, than to dismiss a real threat as a harmless object, a false negative that could cost you your life. This instinct made our forebears incredibly efficient at spotting patterns, even when no true pattern existed. Our brains are hardwired for this. A specialized region in the temporal cortex, often called the fusiform face area, makes us exceptionally sensitive to anything remotely resembling a human face. But fast forward to the safety of modern life, and this hypervigilance becomes a source of profound absurdity and, at times, genuine harm. That quick trigger pattern recognition, so vital for discerning friend from foe in the wild, now manifests as a susceptibility to seeing signs and portents everywhere, fueling superstitions and a belief in the supernatural. A series of coincidences becomes an undeniable message from the universe. A random noise transforms into a ghostly presence, or a streak of bad luck is attributed to a curse. More insidiously, this ancient mechanism makes us incredibly vulnerable to confirmation bias and conspiracy theories. Our brain, desperate to connect the dots, pieces together unrelated events, whispers, and fragmented information into intricate narratives that make sense to our inner cave dweller. It's the feeling that everything is connected, even when there's no logical or evidentiary basis. This predisposition is actively exploited by the deluge of misinformation and fake news online. When presented with fragmented data that even vaguely aligns with an existing belief or fear, our ancient pattern-recognizing brain quickly fills in the gaps, creating a coherent though entirely false story, making us readily believe what we want to believe, regardless of the truth. We're not just seeing faces in toast, we're constructing entire alternate realities based on shadows and whispers, all because our brain is still trying to save us from imaginary threats. If seeing faces in your toast or constructing elaborate conspiracy theories from random data is your brain's somewhat whimsical attempt to save you from imaginary threats, what happens when that same ancient mechanism starts categorizing people? When it instinctively sorts humanity into us and them, allies and enemies, the consequences, as you might imagine, are far less amusing and far more destructive. This isn't a flaw in your character. It's the deeply ingrained echo of tribalism, a survival strategy forged over millions of years. For our ancestors, belonging to a tight-knit group was the difference between life and death. The us, our tribe, our clan, our family, provided protection, shared resources, and ensured procreation. The them, anyone outside that immediate circle, was a potential competitor for food, water, or territory, an unknown, and therefore a potential threat. Your brain became incredibly efficient at drawing these lines, often with very little information. Studies have even shown that when people are arbitrarily assigned to groups based on something as trivial as their preference for an abstract painting or a coin toss, they almost immediately begin to favor their in-group and exhibit bias against the out-group. It's a primal switch flipped, cementing allegiance even where none logically exists. Neurochemically, this tribal bond is reinforced by hormones like oxytocin, the very same chemical that fosters love and trust within our intimate relationships. But this love hormone has a dark side. It can also intensify our distrust and aggression towards those outside our group, solidifying the protective wall around our perceived tribe. Simultaneously, your amygdala, the brain's ancient alarm system, is still wired to react with caution or even fear when encountering profound otherness, treating a stranger as a potential threat in the same way it would have viewed an unknown figure approaching a prehistoric camp. In the vast, interconnected tapestry of the modern world, this ancient mechanism manifests as a cascade of profoundly irrational and damaging behaviors. Political discourse, instead of being a reasoned debate, devolves into fierce battles between our party and their party, where loyalty overrides logic and the goal is to defeat, not to understand. Online, this tribalism runs rampant. The anonymity of the internet fuels endless keyboard wars, where strangers with differing opinions are quickly dehumanized and attacked, transforming simple disagreements into existential conflicts. The rise of cancel culture, for all its complexities, echoes the ancient tribal practice of ostracizing or expelling individuals who threaten group cohesion or violate its norms, albeit often with disproportionate fury and far-reaching consequences in a globally public forum. And at its most extreme, this us versus them mentality metastasizes into xenophobia, discrimination, and even the dangerous fervor of extreme nationalism, all rooted in a brain still trying to protect its tiny, vulnerable tribe from the vast, unknown world, even when that world is just another human being across the screen. And when your brain is no longer busy dividing the world into us and them, it finds another way to protect you by preventing you from doing the things you're supposed to do. This is when we encounter one of the most irrational instincts of the caveman within us: chronic procrastination. Have you ever wondered why? Even though you know a task is important and needs to be completed, you still find yourself scrolling social media, watching an old movie, or suddenly feeling the urge to meticulously clean your entire house. Modern society often labels procrastination as laziness, lack of willpower, or even a bad habit that must be eliminated. But what if I told you it isn't your fault at all, that it's actually an ancient survival mechanism malfunctioning in the 21st century world? Our ancestors lived in a world where every calorie consumed mattered for survival. Running, hunting, gathering, or even social interaction required energy. As a result, the brain developed a mechanism that prioritized energy conservation. If there was no immediate threat or opportunity, resting was the optimal choice. Sleeping, resting, or simply doing nothing was a way to store energy for future life or death situations. Today, your caveman brain is still programmed the same way. When you face a difficult, effort-demanding, or boring task like writing a report, preparing a presentation, or exercising, the primitive brain sends out a warning signal. Danger. This requires too much energy. Stay away from it. And it's not just about conserving energy. Your brain also has another mechanism that's even stronger: threat avoidance. For our ancestors, threats came in the form of predators, rival tribes, or food shortages. For your modern brain, an upcoming deadline, the possibility of failure, being judged, or even the uncertainty of starting something new, all of these can be interpreted as threats. The limbic system, the part of the brain responsible for emotions and survival instincts, prioritizes avoiding these uncomfortable feelings. Procrastination provides an immediate reward, temporary relief from not having to face stress, anxiety, or fear. It's like touching something hot and pulling your hand back, an instant reaction to avoid pain. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning, logic, and long-term thinking, gets overpowered. It knows that completing the task will bring long-term benefits, but the limbic system wins with its promise of immediate comfort. Fear of failure, or even fear of success, and the responsibilities that come with it, are all interpreted by the brain as potential dangers best avoided. Just like a deer freezing when sensing danger, your brain sometimes locks up under pressure, seeking safety in doing nothing. The consequences of this rest to survive instinct in the modern world are ironic. We miss important deadlines, experience growing guilt and stress as time runs out. We miss opportunities for promotion, learning new skills, or pursuing passions, all because the primitive brain is trying to protect us from an invisible threat. Our potential goes untapped, and the cycle of procrastination continues, turning energy conservation into a trap we set for ourselves. The trap of procrastination, where our ancient drive to conserve energy ironically drains our potential, brings us to a crucial realization. We've journeyed through the deep, often shadowy recesses of your own mind, uncovering the invisible threads woven by a caveman who still whispers instructions in the age of fiber optics and AI. From the phantom monsters lurking in the dark corners of your modern home to the insatiable craving for sugar that feels almost involuntary, from the invisible boundaries you instinctively draw around yourself in a crowded elevator to the undeniable pull of digital drama. These aren't flaws in your character, they are echoes, powerful and persistent, of a survival operating system designed for a world that ceased to exist millennia ago. We've seen how our fear of the unknown keeps us trapped in comfort zones, how a fake alarm system in our brain triggers chronic stress over mundane tasks, how our mind conjures patterns out of chaos, leading us down rabbit holes of superstition or conspiracy, and how ancient tribalism fuels online animosity. Even the seemingly simple act of putting off a task reveals a complex interplay of ancient energy conservation and threat avoidance mechanisms. So, what does this all mean for you? navigating the complexities of the 21st century. It means you are not broken or weird for feeling these urges, these inexplicable anxieties, or these persistent habits. You are simply running on a default setting that needs an update. Understanding these primal programs isn't about excusing them, it's about gaining awareness, the first step towards taking back control. It's about recognizing when your inner caveman is trying to protect you from a deadline as if it were a saber-toothed tiger, or urging you to hoard digital files as if winter were coming. The real power lies not in fighting these instincts blindly, but in observing them. The next time you find yourself inexplicably drawn to a celebrity scandal, or feel a surge of irritation when someone stands too close, or hit snooze on that important task, pause. Ask yourself, is this truly me responding, or is it a deep-seated legacy of survival playing out in a world it no longer understands? What other unreasonable instincts do you recognize within yourself? Now that you've seen the influence of your inner caveman, or perhaps what unexpected connections have you made about your own behavior after watching this, share your insights below. Or better yet, simply spend a day observing. Pay attention to those subtle nudges, those irrational urges. You might just discover something incredibly profound about the ancient you pulling the strings. If this journey into the primitive mind has resonated with you, and you're curious to unravel more of humanity's fascinating psychological mysteries, make sure to follow along. Let's continue to explore the depths of who we are, together.